Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, As-salatu was-salam wa ala Rasulihil Kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It's a pleasure for me to coming back home. Edmonton is like home to me. I mean, I have seen a lot of new faces that I did not met when I was here. But I was in Edmonton from 2009 to 2014, and then living for United States, very close by, in August of 2014. So it's a real pleasure for me to coming back here and seeing this initiative. When I was, I got the invitation to coming here. That was a pleasure for me. But the problem that when you get the invitation, you need to sit down and prepare for a talk, right? And I was requested to give a handout, and I always got lazy, and I could not finish that. And when I was just attending the workshop, I think I'm a little bit smart to closely follow all the posters, and I think I can make up my discussion just based on what you guys are saying and what coming out of the workshop. I think those are all important points, and we don't need anything more than that. So we just need to realize that what we are talking, the problems that we are facing in our everyday life, and just reminding each other. So the most important thing that we are getting from this type of halaka or conference is just a reminder. So of course what I'm going to discuss will be a reminder for myself, and that will be a reminder for all of ourselves, inshallah. Two more disclaimers. So one thing that my talk will not be too practical, it will be a little bit philosophical. So I'll just try to discuss about that how we understand this issue from Islamic point of view, within Islamic philosophy, the theological understanding, and so on. I'll touch some practical issues, but not a lot. So the practical perspective will be a little bit different than what I'm talking. And the second on that, I'm not the board certified scholar, so I do not have any such type of authority. So if you find that anything that I say is contradictory to somebody whom you know as a scholar and you trust, just throw out what I'm saying and just follow the scholar you trust. I have no problem with that. Okay. So one important thing that why we are picking this topic, that this family, how we will raise them, and especially in a situation what we are facing in North America, in a majority non-Muslim countries. The reason is that family is the fundamental block of human civilization. So this is where everything starts, right? If you look at how human being is going through their experience in their life, so everything starts from family. So this is important. And if you look into Islamic philosophy, then there is one term that's called maqasid al-sharia. This means the higher objective of Islam. That if you just go through the Quran and Hadith, look into the fiqh principles and others, and try to find out where the most important concern of Islam is. So the jurist has classified that as the maqasid al-sharia, the higher objective of the sharia. And one of the higher objectives is basically the preservation of family. The exact term that was coined by the jurist is the preservation of lineage. And if you look into the different principles of Islam, for example, that it is prescribed that you got married and you start a family if you don't have a very reasonable cause. So that is one principle. You look that this goes to the preservation of family. The fiqh principle of Islam, that you cannot continue an extramarital relation, that what is very common in this society, that very exclusively haram in Islam, that also goes back that Islam wants to preserve this family institution. And then if we look into the rulings of the distribution of the wealth, when some people die, that how his wealth will be distributed, that also goes through this blood-connected relationship. And also Islam is a little bit concerned that you can adopt a child if you have a legitimate cause, but you cannot alter his identity. You cannot just say that an adopted child is your own child by blood. So that is one of the reason in fiqh that Islam wants to preserve family as an institution. And the reason that it has a very big impact, I'm going through two examples. One example is from our history. We all know Imam al-Shafi. He's one of the famous jurists. We have the 4 different schools, and those are very well known and popular among the Muslims. And Imam Shafi is the founder of one of those schools, and he's a very prominent Islamic scholar. He was born in Gaza, what is now the Palestine, and his father died at a very early age. Then his mother decided to move from Gaza to Mecca. So that was the decision done by her mother. And this was not an easy decision, because now when you have a very high quality plane to fly, if you go to this Palestine, it also take a couple of hours and more than that. But if you just consider at that time the way she had to travel, the travel from Gaza to Mecca, it was a very big decision. There was 2 reasons why she took this decision. One of the reasons was that she was interested to provide her kid, that means the young Imam Shafi, the best Islamic education available in that society. And that's why she was motivated to move to Mecca, because most of the prominent Islamic scholar was there. And then the second motivation was that Imam Shafi was born, he had a lineage of being the part of the Quraysh tribe. And she thought that if she moved to Mecca, she will get a lot of kith and kin that belongs to the Quraysh tribe, and that will be helpful for them. And also that will be helpful not for the financial reason, but to provide him the education and to grow him in a better environment. And now look, when Imam Shafi moved to Mecca, his mother went to a very famous jurist at the time. His name was Muslim ibn Khalid al-Zanzi. He was known as the Mufti of Mecca, and Imam Shafi was his teacher for almost a decade and more than that. Then Imam Shafi moved to Medina, and there he got Imam Malik as his teacher. So you can find out the height of the student by looking into the height of the teacher. And you know, when we come to this modern time and looking into best of these universities and looking how the PhD and the research are going on, this is basically one-to-one teaching. That you go under a very renowned professor and he trained you personally. And earlier time, the Islamic education was like that the young kid at the age of 5, 6 or 7 goes to a teacher like a one-to-one education system, and after 5 or 10 years they went out and become the scholar. Now if you look into the teacher and to the height of the teacher, then you understand that how much the student can be bright and go how far they. Now if you look into the life of Imam Shafi, the contribution of Imam Malik and the contribution of Muslim ibn Khalid al-Zanzi was extraordinary. But this extraordinary service that he got was basically the decision that was taken by his mother. So family is really important, that one decision by the father or mother that impact the fate of the kid, that how far he can go, which path he will take. So this is why we are highly concerned about that when we are parents, we are father and mother, then how we think about our kids and what we are going to provide our kids. That becomes very important. Now, let's look into the other side of the coin, a very bad example in this society. I just got into this in Washington Post a couple of days ago that there was an incident in Texas that young woman, she was 19 or 20 years old and she was mom of 2 kids. And one night she put the 2 kids on her car and went to attend a party. And she was there for a long time, and when she came back and she found the kids were dead. and the court has been given her a 40 years imprisonment and so on and going on like that. Now you can think that this is a very awful example, that this is ours. This is not the standard even of the society. This is ours too. I agree. If you grow up in a very conservative society and look into this example, you will find that, wow, what's the wrong thing, what's the stupid things going on. But what is the connection? The connection is that if we forgot to transfer our values of preserving family as an institution to our next generation, then after a couple of generations, you can face that this type of phenomena will become very normal in the society. I mean, if you go just 50 or 100 years back to our parent generation, they cannot think that this can happen. You cannot think a mom can be like that. But now in this time, that has been an exception. But if we are not careful in preserving our values, this exception might be an example. A society can move that way. Because if you start going downhill, then there is acceleration. And that acceleration can put you into such a condition. So taking this issue that we need to preserve family as an institution and transfer our values to our next generation so that they grow up with that values and seeing the chain and this way going and going. So that's really an important thing. And when you think this way, then one is connected to the other. For example, being a good Muslim by myself, that's just me. But then looking into the family and bringing a good Muslim family, that is interconnected. Then bringing the kids within the Islamic fold, and then looking into the society and environment and making a Muslim-friendly society around your family and friends. That's also very complicated. Now we can go through in one way that if you are not a good Muslim, then it's very tough to contribute your family to be a good Muslim family. And if your family is not a good Muslim family, it is very complicated to raise your kids as Muslim. And if you cannot raise your kids as Muslim, then you cannot influence the society. So this is the forward relationship. But now there is a backward relationship. That if the society is not good enough, then you always have a problem to grow your kids. I mean, this is the workshop is telling about. There is a peer group pressure, there is a problem of the school, there is a problem that you cannot control your kid when they grow up, you cannot just monitor every time what they're doing. So these are the problem coming back to you. And similarly, that if your family collectively, if they collectively do not value the Islamic values, it's very tough to maintain your own spirituality. And if you just look into the examples around you, you will find out there's a lot of people that who started with a good spirituality, but then they lose that. Because maybe their spouse was not like that. And this is true for both husband and wife. The husband is good, but the wife is not, and the wife is good, but the husband is not. And over time, they're losing this integrity. This is happening around our society. So this is a both-way connection, and you should be very careful that if you care about this end of the equation, we need to be careful about the other end of the equation, because it's coming back to us. And this is why we need to be very careful that how we want to contribute to our kids and to the society, and at the same time become a little bit careful the society we are living into, and contribute that society to be a little bit more Islamized. Now, if you live completely in isolation, then you can live by yourself, no problem. But nobody of us is basically living in isolation. We live in a society. And that's why you need to be careful about the society. There is a very beautiful hadith of Rasulullah ﷺ, and this hadith in Sahih Muslim, this is talking about the time of fitna. This is relevant to that, because there are other hadith that support that this is related to the time of fitna. A person came to Rasulullah ﷺ and asked him, Ya Rasulullah, that which of the people is best? Then this type of question, when came to Rasulullah ﷺ, he different time answered differently, because depending on the context. Now on this context, Rasulullah ﷺ saying that a man who do jihad, the jihad does not mean only the battlefield, it means any type of a struggle to uphold the Islamic values for the sake of Allah with his wealth and his self. Then the person asking the question again, who the second one? Then Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saying that a believer in a mountain pass worship Allah and leaves the people alone. So these are completely two different scenarios. He said the 1 and 2. Now let's say that both 1 and 2 is group A. Both are A+, but you have a 1 and 2. So these are the two different scenarios. This one people living in the society, fighting back to uphold the Islamic values and creating an Islamic environment around him. And then the other people who completely abandon this society and going into isolation. Now why both of them? One in the North Pole, one in the South Pole, both are good. Why? The reason is that either you have leave everything and go to isolation because it's not then affecting you, or the only option that left for you is fighting back. It's just changing the society so that it help you. But if you just doing nothing, living in the society and just getting impacted by that and losing your next generation and the faith and the values, then you become loser. So that has nothing scope in the Islam. So it is not a question of fiqh. It's a question of just your common sense that if you do not impact the society is coming and impacting you back. So this is the reason that why we need to be very careful that what kind of Islamic environment we should provide our kids and how we can do that. Now let's go back a little bit about that. What does a family mean? A couple of philosophical points that I'll try to remind myself and yourself, and then we'll come back some practical aspects that how we can contribute our kids to raise in a society where Islam is not the prominent factor. But before that, if you look into the family, there are a couple of the components. The first, that relationship between the husband and wife, then the relationship that how parents should take care of the kids, and then in the other way that how as a son or daughter we should do our duties to our parents, and also the extended families, because the blood tie-ship is not only the father and mother and the brothers and sisters, but it goes to uncles, aunties, cousins, and that's also part of our responsibility. So that should be the other thing. Now there are a couple of elements that matters in a relationship. I will just pick three most important things. The first one will be the spirituality. The second one, the love and affection, and the third one is gratitude or acknowledgement or shukr in more Islamic terminologies. Because sometimes when you go through this relationship, because everybody in this relationship, if a person believes in Allah or not, if he practices Islam or not, we all have those relationships. But when we are good Muslims and looking through the Islamic philosophy and looking through the prism of Islam, then we should try to understand that what Islamic philosophy teaches us to look into this relationship. And what are the rights and conditions there, what are the responsibilities. And that is one of the reasons that we should take spirituality as the most prominent component of any type of relationship. Even in the romantic relationship between husband and wife, spirituality should be a component if you look through Islamic prism. And if you look into the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam life, you will find out a lot of examples like that. I'm just going through a single hadith where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is emphasizing that how much important to maintain the blood relationship. The Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam from a hadith saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created this relationship who's going through the blood, the kinship, the relationship. And then that relationship was asking to Allah that I have been cut off. That means that there will be some people who will cut off this relationship. Then Allah said that if somebody cut off this relationship, I will cut off him. So this is not just if you read the social science, you'll find out that there is a lot of reasons why people started to form families, why people want to make a group. There is a lot of social science reason, and of course those exist. I'm not denying them. But the most important component when you see through the faith is that this is the spirituality. That this is the part of the design of Allah, that human being will go through this design. Now when I understand as a slave of Allah that this is the design of Allah, then my duty is to fulfill that design and not doing anything that contradicts with that. Allah has given that freedom that I can cut off my relationship, but that will be haram. That will be something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not please with. So this is the reason that why the spirituality should be the first condition by which we should take care of this relationship. Now the second relationship that is more human, you can understand that even outside of the theology, but of course there is also a theological part, and that is the love and affection that you feel for that. For as a father to the kids, as a kid to the father, as a husband to wife, and as a wife to husband. And the prominent thing is the emotional attachment. Now in some cultures, the emotional attachment looks like a weakness, right? Even you will find there's some religious culture this like that to be more lovely to your wife or husband, they don't like it. There is some that way. Even like, especially in our traditional culture, if you are a father and if you're not so hard and angry and harsh, that looks like that you're not a good father. But that's not the Islamic perspective. The emotional attachment that is always respected within Islam. And I will say this is a prophetic sunnah. This is a prophetic sunnah. As a father and as a husband, and also as a wife, as a spouse, this is the prophetic sunnah. Let me give a couple of examples. That if you look into the hadith of Rasulullah, his personal life, and you look at how much emotion he had for Khadija radiallahu ta'ala an and Aisha radiallahu ta'ala an, then you will find out that how romantic that is. And I will say that is more romantic than any epic story or literature that talks about the romance and other stuff. That Rasulullah never forgot Khadija radiallahu ta'ala an from his life. And the same thing happened for Aisha radiallahu ta'ala. He has a very good relationship with other wives, but this too was exceptional. And you can find out the height of romantic relationship in this one. And if you look at that, how much passionate Rasulullah was with his own kids and with his grandkid, let's say Hassan and Hussein. There's an hadith that once Rasulullah was kissing his grandson, and then a Bedouin person came and asking Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, are you kissing your grandson? I have 10 children, I never kissed them. So he was raised in such a society where a father means he will be a very harsh and hard man. That being lovely to your kids will not well appreciated in the society. But Rasulullah was not like that. He did not approve that. And he made a very famous comment. He said that he who does not show mercy to others will not be shown mercy by Allah. So this is a part of a very famous hadith, that if you want to be merciful, if you want to get mercy from Allah, then you have to be merciful to your own people. And this is the part of the hadith, and that comes with your son, daughter, and with your grandson, and so on and so on. When the son of Rasulullah, Ibrahim, he died at a very early age. And then Rasulullah was crying when he went to his bed, that he was sick and he was just dying. And Rasulullah was crying. And a Sahaba, his name was Abdurrahman ibn Auf, he said, Ya Rasulullah, are you crying? So what does this question mean? This question might be two things. It's our guess that we can interpret that way. The one thing, Ya Rasulullah, you know what death is, and you know what is after death. You are the Prophet. Then why you're crying? That can be a philosophical question like that. The second one, from that Bedouin culture, he can think you are the commander-in-chief, and you are the head of the state, and it does not look good that you're crying just for your dying child. That looks like you're a little bit unfit about the commander-in-chief. So it may be both of these two dimensions. But look, in the answer of Rasulullah is very simple. He says, is the rahmah. See, that is the rahmah that's coming from my heart. And then he make a beautiful poetry. Rasulullah said, the eyes are shedding tears and the heart is grieved and will not say except what pleases our Rabb. He said that I have a very pain in my heart. But that does not mean that what I will say by my tongue that will go against Allah. But this also implies that as long as my verbal expression is not going against Allah, I do not need to suppress the emotion in my heart. I do not need that. So that is one of the meaning of that. I'll go through two more examples. One is, the Surah Yusuf, right? So Yaqub a.s. was prophet, and when he lost Yusuf, his son, and his son was lost at an early age, then Yaqub a.s. started crying, and crying so much so that he lost his eyesight. And he got back the eyesight when Yusuf a.s. was back. So do anybody knows that how many years between that? That when Yaqub a.s. lost Yusuf and when he got back, how many years will be that? 5, 10, 20, 40? Okay, there is not exact things, but of course it will be more than 25 or 30, right? It will be more than, but you could say he was a young, and when he established, he became just, when he got the prophethood, maybe it was 40, right? If we guess the way the Quran used those terms, it will be 35 or 40 years. So he was constantly crying for his lost child for 40 years. And he is not a lunatic old man, he is a prophet. He's just a prophet. And he is doing that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing that in the Quran. And we have a lesson into that. And you will not get a single verses in the Quran which criticized him. That why you are doing that. Ma'riful Quran has a very beautiful discussion that why a prophet is crying like that. Does it mean that he does not have patience on Allah? Does it mean that he does not have a trust on Allah? That who are interested, read the tafsir. There's a very beautiful discussion on that. But I'm just only saying that Quran is not criticizing him. Quran is portraying a good father and who is a prophet and who is crying for 30 years for his lost child. It's not easy. I mean, if I just challenge anybody that how long can you mourn for somebody whom you love? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and you're done. Your heart is not that big. But his heart was a prophet's heart, and that does not contradict with his duty with prophethood. Then come to another example. The most complicated time that you go this relationship with the father and child is Ibrahim alayhi salam. Because he was ordered to make sacrifice to his own kid. That is the most tough thing. That did not happen. But he went to do that. Right? Now, I was interested. What was his psychological condition when he went there? So there might be two scenarios. One, that his heart is so much hard and harsh, and he's so much motivated to Allah that he's not feeling the pain of that emotion. He's just saying, okay, this is the orders of Allah, and we'll get it. But you find that some of the lunatic people sometimes say, I saw a dream and I'm going to do this, and you find out that he does not have that emotion. So that can be the one scenario. But the other scenario was that he was a lovely father as much as Yaqub alayhi salam was. But he is suppressing his emotion and sacrificing that to the wish of Allah. Now in the Quran, if you read the verses, the way it was going, that was not describing very well the emotion of Ibrahim alayhi salam. But there is one good thing, that is that when Ibrahim alayhi salam started to do that qurbani, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying that you have passed your exam, then the next verse in Surah Al-Nisa is saying falamma aslama. So here the aslama is plural. That means that both of them have submitted to Allah. Now when you say the submission, so what does it mean? It means that you had a test and you qualified that. Now what is the test with Ismail alayhi salam? His test was that he got that his father is prophet and Allah has ordered him to kill. Now his surrender is surrendering his own life. That okay, I agree that you kill me. So you're surrendering your own life. Now what Ibrahim alayhi salam is surrendering, if he does not have the emotion for his own child, then it is not a surrender, it is not a test at all. This is the test when you are a lovely father. Because this is the test only when you have that emotion. Now if you decrease that emotion and become a harsh and hard man, then this is not a test at all. This is not a test at all. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that falamma aslama, so that means that Ibrahim alayhi salam had that touchy heart and feelings for his own kid. But he loved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so much so that he was ready to sacrifice his emotion. And that gives the next principle of loving somebody, that you put the wish of the beloved more than what is your own wish. So if you can't do that, that's not that level of love that Ibrahim alayhi salam is. So the next point will be the shukr. So in any relationship, if you get something from somebody, that somebody loves you, somebody has done some sacrifice for you, he has done something good for you, then one important rule is that you should acknowledge that. You should say thank you. And if you look into Rasulullah's life, there are a couple of very big events that happen in his life, and you can find out that how much acknowledgement and shukr he himself had to that. I'm giving 3 examples. One is his first wife, Khadija radhiyallahu anha. Because when Khadija married Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was a poor man. Through this marriage, he became rich. He did not have a very good shelter and other stuff, but he got that. He got the business and other stuff. And he also get the psychological help from Khadija radhiyallahu anha. And then when she died, because Khadija radhiyallahu anha died when Rasulullah was in Makkah, then he went to Medina and went through a very vital situation. There was a couple of battles, the Badr, then Uhud, and the Khandaq, and so on, and he got married for political reasons and other stuff. But Rasulullah never forgot Khadija radhiyallahu anha. There is a statement from Aisha in Medina, because these are the people who gave him shelter, and these are the people who came out of his houses to fight for him. And in the last time of Rasulullah, there are a couple of hadith that shows that how much grateful he was to them and how much emotional attachment he had to answers. In a very famous hadith, he said that if all the people goes in one way and the answers of Medina goes in other way, I prefer to go with them. And look into this, that after the conquer of Makkah, Rasulullah did not stay there. He came back to be in Medina with answers. But when it came about the political decision of appointing a Khalifa, he said that you give preference to the Quraysh. Because if you do not give the preference to the Quraysh, there will be chaos, because politics is complicated. But when it comes to his own decision, that where he will stay, he's just going through his shukr, that I should stay with answers and not going back to the people of Makkah. And then another shukr of Rasulullah's life is to Abu Bakr, because he was his best friend and he supported a lot of things to Rasulullah. And in a hadith that was almost at the end of Rasulullah's life, he said that if I had to choose somebody as a friend, here friendship does not mean what we say as buddy, it's just the highest level of friendship. And he said, I would take Abu Bakr. And he said, the reason I am not taking his as a friend, because I have friendship with Allah. Now look, Rasulullah is comparing the relation with him and Abu Bakr that qualify the essence that the relationship he had with him and Allah. So this is the honor that Rasulullah gave to Abu Bakr. Now the lesson that we can learn from that when we have something in our life, that yes, my spouse did a very big favor to me, or my kid did that, or as a father I did that, or my father did to me, just do not forget that. Do not forget that throughout your life. Just make a note to your mind and always be grateful and try to give it back as much as you can. Okay. So these 3 things, that the spirituality and the love and affection and the shukr, that you look into the relationship. Now, these are all very ideological as a motivation. That is the highest status that we should go. But now, when the realism comes, at the end of the day, we are the human being with our limitation, right? We are human being with our sin, we are human being with our arrogance, we are impatience, and so on and so on. So we need a couple of checkpoints that will be very practical. So when everything not going that level of high, even if we try, right? That's our everyday life, right? That's our everyday life. You sometimes get angry, you sometimes go to the point that you don't like, and so on and so on. So the couple of things that should be very important to tackle with that is the forgiveness and rahmah. That you always should treat somebody else with forgiveness. That maybe it's not the standard way you look, maybe it's not the best thing that you like, but of course then you should provide and offer the openness of your heart. And there is a very beautiful hadith that Rasulullah said that those who are merciful, they will be shown mercy by the most merciful. And then Rasulullah said that urhamu man fil ard, that show rahmah on this earth, yarhamukum man fis sama. Then the entity in the samawat, the heaven, the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is meaning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will show mercy to you. So this is one general principle, that something is not up to the standard and you are aggrieved, but still you become lenient. You don't become a very harsh judge, and you just get it away. Every time you do this in your life, every time we do in your life, we'll get something back from Allah. Believe me, this is a general principle in Islam. There is a couple of rules. This is like the law of physics, the way it works. In the spirituality, the law works exactly the same way. So every time we do that in our life for somebody else, we get that back from Allah. I'm giving a very specific example in Quran, in the 4th chapter of the Quran, and this is the verse number 19, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, let's say this is a scenario like that you're not happy in your family and you have a problem. Either the wife has a problem with the husband, or the husband has a problem with wife. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that do not make difficulties for them in order to take part of what you gave them, unless they commit a clear immorality. The Arabic, they're saying that fahishatun bayyana, mubayyana. So this means that even if there's a many couple of different explanations, but one of the explanation that is valid, and many of the tafsir has done that, they're saying that means that you do not like your wife, or the wife, you do not like your husband, but the scenario is not like this, that there is a problem of very clear fahisha. There is not a moral issue. This is just an issue of, this is the issue of likeliness or emotional attachment, just like that. It is not a moral issue. There is not a great sin committed. There is not the violation of the Sharia. This is just like that I don't like, or it's not very good for them. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is discouraging to take your decision motivated by your own likeliness, rather than He is motivating and saying that live with them in kindness. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying a principle, فَإِن كَرِهْتُمُهُنَّ فَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. That maybe you don't like that, but this can happen, that you dislike a thing, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you khair, will give you much good things, and then He's adding an adjective, kasira. It is not a very small good, it will be a very big good. So He's motivating that if your decision is not dominated by your likeliness and dislikeliness, rather than if you offer the rahmah from your heart and go with that, just remember this principle, that something can be apparently bad for you, that you are looking into that, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made a lot of good in you. Now, how this good will happen? It can happen in abundant way. But some of the tafsir, in tafsir, the mufassir say that Allah will compensate them with a better kid. Allah will give them very bright and brilliant children. They will be muttaqi, they will be very good in the religion. So that is one explanation. But it is not limited to that, because the capacity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not limited, and the promise in this verse is not limited. But this is a general principle, that when your decision is not dominated by your likeliness or dislikeliness, rather than it is dominated by your rahmah, and your mercy, then it will be compensated by Allah with rahmah and mercy. So that should be a fundamental principle when you find out that we are the human being on the earth with lots of problem and limitation. We are not angels. So we have to look by that. Okay, so two more things and then I will finish that. When we're going to raise our kids in this society, there are two fundamental principles that we should be very careful about. One is the sincerity, that how much closely we love them, how much time we give them. The relationship is nothing but the good memories. It's always the memories, that how much memories you build. And when you need to build the memory, you need to give the quality time. If the time is not there, then you cannot build a memory. If you today hear a news that there is an earthquake in somewhere in the city you never visited, of course you will be sorry that people are dying, but look at your emotion. And you find out the city there is an earthquake where you actually visited last summer, then you will find out that the emotion is completely different because you have some first-hand memory with that. So that is the human mind works. So how much memory, good memories you can create with the beloved people you love, with your family, that will be basically the sincerity that goes into the relationship. And then the second thing, that how much quality you are serving your kids with. So this is basically what you are giving them, what is your legacy. And this comes the first point that we are discussing in the workshop, that when you have to provide the quality and contribute to your kids, you have to have the quality by yourself beforehand. But if you do not practice that, you cannot do that. At least you need to have achieved something, and then you can give the other stuff. I can give you an example. Imam Ghazali rahimahullah, he was a very great scholar. His father was not a scholar. He was not a scholar. But his father had a very great aspiration of knowledge. So what he did, he saved some money from his business and give that money to one of his friends and say that if I die, and if I cannot contribute to my child's education, it is your duty to put this money, keep this money, and provide this money to help the education of my kids. And actually that happened, that his father died at his early age, and those uncle, his father's friend, he came back and put him and his brothers to a very good schools with very good scholars. And at the end of the day, we get a great scholars of Islam. So look, his father was not that much qualified, but he had that aspiration to overcome his own quality. So it is not the question that every time the parents have to be equipped with all kind of quality that you have to provide to your kids. But you should have that aspiration, and you should sit down and plan that what I can contribute to my kids. And that practical plan is the most important thing that we can put our legacy on. Now in this culture, we have the question of freedom, that you have to just put your kid what they want to be. But this is not exactly true every time, because nobody is growing in a free environment. People are just getting influenced. Just let's say that one young kid growing in Bangladesh, he will be fond of being a cricketer, and one young kid grown in the United States of Canada will be a basketball player. Okay, I'll finish just in 1 minute. So that does not mean that these two have two different genetic inclination. This just means that they have been grown up into two different environments. So as a parents, we should just put that motivation of environment so that our kids can grow in a good environment and being a good Muslim. So I'll thank you all. Coming into this halakha is a very good step, that we want to provide our kids to do that, and we need to collectively think about that, how we can proceed with that. And of course we have to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that He accepts our limitations and the way we try, and give rahmah and barakah on top of that for us, our families, and our kids. So I'm going to stop with that, and inshallah we'll be going to the prayer after that. Jazakallahu khairan for your time and attention.